Okay, so hello. Let me see if I can adjust this where it actually looks like I'm looking at the camera. Who cares? Hello and welcome to December 38th, 2020. I I'm not at a loss for words. I just don't even know where to begin with the events of yesterday and everything that's happened, and not so much the events. Yes, the events of yesterday were disturbing, and let's see if I can zoom in on me. Yes, they were disturbing. Yes, there were a lot of things to address in just that, but I think people's responses to what happened yesterday were more of a concern for me. So I need to preface this with a couple of things before I begin. Um, One, I voted for Trump. All right. I have my own special personal reasons for voting for Trump. I honestly didn't want to vote at all, um, because I felt like both candidates were garbage. But uh, enough people convinced me that my vote mattered to place a vote, and I voted for Trump. All right. So that's the first thing. Second, I don't believe that every Trump supporter is racist. I don't believe that every Trump supporter is delusional. I don't believe that everybody that voted for Trump is a bigoted Islamophobe and homophobe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. With that said, I do believe that there are a significant enough amount of Trump supporters that do fall in that vein, um, that it's beginning to be a little disturbing. All right. So if you have been living under a rock, on yesterday, January 6, 2021, there was a congressional vote to certify the elections, the results of the elections that were on in November. On top of that, Georgia had a re-election count for their two seats in the Senate, which basically led to the Democrat Party getting a slim margin, but a majority control over the Senate. Basically, the deciding vote being cast by the, I guess, the vice president elect, you would call her, Kamala Harris. All right. All right. So basically, if there's any sort of a tie-breaking vote, Vice President Kamala Harris will get the deciding vote. On top of that, the Democrats have a House majority. So, for those that are up with the politics, the Democrats have the presidency, they have the House of Representatives, and they have control over the Senate. Anything that they want to pass, they can. All right. So I do want to say that that is a reality. All right. I'm not sure how much I care at this point, because of the events that happened following that news and the news that so there was also this thing where Mike Pence was called upon, our current vice president, Mike Pence. He was called upon by our current president, Donald J. Trump, to overturn the election results due to some sort of weird loophole. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but apparently there is a deal where during the election certification, the vice president actually has some sort of extra authority to overturn the election results if he were to feel like there wasn't any fair voting or something like that. It's basically some sort of like on behalf of the people type of thing, and it's really more of like, from what I understand, it's like a ceremonial thing. It's like a changing of the guard, right? It's like when in the military we have what's called the changing of the guard, where Old commander is going to another base and a new commander takes over. So they basically have this thing where you hand the American flag to the old commander hands the American flag to the new commander. And I guess that was kind of the same thing. So the idea was, I guess, to break it down to those terms, if Mike Pence refused to hand the flag over to the new commander, then like it was like it never existed, type of thing. It's a simplistic way of putting it, but I guess that was kind of the idea behind it, was that Donald Trump was just saying, well, just don't certify the election. But most of Congress and Mike Pence himself believed that this was more of a ceremonial objection. It wouldn't have carried any weight, so he refused to do it. Right? For the first time in his 4 years as vice president, he stood up to Donald Trump and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. We lost and we need to accept the fact that we lost. And, that's it. That's the name of the game. I guess somewhere in between the news of the Democrats winning the Georgia Senate seats and Georgia essentially turning blue, both in the presidential and the senatorial election, and Mike Pence refusing to play along to Trump's tune, a bunch of radicals got together and decided to storm the White House. Not the White House, but they decided to storm the Capitol building. All right. And in the middle of a congressional session. All right. Just saying that out loud is weird to me. All right, and let me explain why. I served in the United States Air Force for 4 years. Proudly, by the way. I was about as hardcore as they came, as hardcore as you could be in the Air Force. I was one of those people. Now, I wasn't like TACP or anything like that, but I was one of those people that was very much proud to wear the uniform and proud to serve my country. All right. And I remember when you do like orientation briefings and things like that, and you're just learning about, the military culture. I remember in the Air Force, we had what was called the flight line. The flight line was basically where they kept all the planes, all right? So all the cargo planes, all the bombers, all of the fighter jets, any sort of transport planes, the flight line, right? Every base has a flight line, all right? And of course, with all of that millions of dollars, dare I say billions of dollars, depending on what base you were at, of equipment that was on base, you would be sure that there were highly restricted areas that regular mortals among us just couldn't go, right? Even if you were like the general, they used to say, even if it's the general, like they can't go into these restricted areas. Only people with a certain clearance could go into these restricted areas on the flight line. And I remember distinctly being warned that security forces personnel, we used to call them SPs, in other branches they call them MPs, military police, security forces personnel, the SPs, were specifically instructed that they didn't care if it was the President of the United States himself. All right? If they didn't have any clearance to be beyond a certain, that we called it the red line, basically. If they weren't cleared to be beyond that red line, they were instructed to warn, they were instructed to fire a warning shot, and then they were instructed to shoot to kill on a flight line, in a random base, any random Air Force base. You could be in Cucamonga, New Mexico. If you're in an Air Force base and you go beyond the restricted area on base, they could kill you if you weren't authorized to be there. Now, looking at that in context to random citizens just strolling in, like we saw the video, like the police opened the gates for them. Random citizens, they didn't even like rush, like I know, like the from the outside it looked like they like rushed the building. They really just walked in. Like they really just walked in. Like they kind of ran. It was like a half run, but like they really just kind of like strolled into the Capitol building in the middle of a congressional hearing that's supposed to be sealed off and secured, and they just, and everybody just watched it happen. That, it's beyond me how this. And so, first of all, let's just deal with this, because I've tried. I really, really, really tried to not bring race into a lot of the politics that was going on over the past 4 years. All right? Because I felt like, honestly, and I still, I'm on the fence about it now, but I honestly felt like Donald Trump was over-demonized for a lot of the 4 years, right? I didn't believe that there was any Russian collusion. I didn't believe that he was racist toward black people. I did believe that he had an issue with Latinos, and that he was low-key racist towards them. But nothing about him really gave me like KKK neo-Nazi vibes. All right? And to a certain extent, I still believe that. All right? I think he might have some old school, like 1920s racism vibes, but not like, just kill all the black people, kill all the Mexicans type of thing. All right? And so, as a result, I've tried to objectively look at Trump and everything that Trump did through the lens of, I don't think he's a racist, right? And there still, even with that objective lens, there were things that Trump did that I didn't agree with. There were things that Trump did that I did agree with, all right? But in this particular instance, it's this and the George Floyd incident, all right? You can't take race out of this. There is no way on God's green earth, in heaven or in hell, you can take race out of this. I will bet anybody any amount of money, had that been a black or a Latino mob, they wouldn't have made it within 100 feet or 100 yards of that gate without snipers gunning people down. Let's just go ahead and say that, all right? Because it was majority white. Now, from what I understand, it might have been like one or two black people or Latino people that kind of like snuck in through the chaos or whatever. But it was a majority white crowd. And because it was a majority white crowd, they just didn't shoot. They didn't shoot. And like literally the entirety of minority America is looking and watching this travesty, this desecration, really, of our nation's capital occur, right? Like, it literally, like, I compare it to watching the Capitol literally get raped and molested, and us just filming it. Like, that's what they did. They stood by and they filmed it. And nobody said anything. No, I'm not going to say nobody said anything. I'm going to say nobody did anything. All right? I can't necessarily just put this all on the Republicans, because the Democrats are at fault too. Joe Biden sounded extra weak. Super duper weak. Talking about, this is not America, and this isn't what we stand for, and these people just need to go home. They need to go home. No, somebody needs to shoot them. Somebody needs to execute them. All right? People are trying to justify it. I am tired of white nationalists that are trying to pretend to not be racist and being overtly racist, right? Like, they want to ignore the fact that this was a matter of racial injustice. They want to gaslight people in thinking that there's no such thing as racism in America, when this clearly shows that there was racism in America. All right? They want to make it where that if you believe that Black Lives Matter, you must be some sort of a communist socialist, right? If you think that it's okay to defend the rights of homosexuals, like the basic human rights of homosexuals, that somehow you're a God-hating freak, right? Like, and I'm really sick of white fundamentalist evangelicals that every time there is something good that happens, I'm just going to say it, in a black church, all right, they have spent years, decades, dare I say, trying to tear down T.D. Jakes' ministry. Why? All because he's black and he's a successful pastor, and they just want to try and spend years just trying to call him a heretic over something that's not even a salvation issue, because they assume he's a modalist. He's never said out loud that he's a modalist, but I guess, they think he's a modalist, and so, they're like, well, he's not Trinitarian, so he can't possibly be preaching the true word of God. He's preaching a different gospel. He's doing all this. No, shut up. You're mad because the slaves actually have hope. All right, I'm tired of people talking about, well, the American people, they need to be incentivized to go back to work. So you mean basically that the slaves need to go back to the plantation? That's really what you mean. I literally have lost all faith in the Republican Party. What little faith I did have in the Republican Party has gone out the window after yesterday. Literally. And I was one of those people who fell for the Candace Owens of the world, the Ben Shapiro's. I was never really a Charlie Kirk kind of guy. Like, that guy's just annoying. But I listened to Ben Shapiro. I listened to Candace Owens. I listened to various other conservative podcasts. And I thought, hey, these people have a point. And to some extent, I'll be fair, I still think some of their points are valid. All right. But this right here, to say this, and like I said, George Floyd, to say that there is no systemic racism in America, when we clearly saw a gang of white people do whatever they wanted to the Capitol building, in a society where us minorities are taught, if you do that, you will be killed. You don't play around with stuff like that. Right? Like, just like in a society where minority kids have to be taught, oh, well, we have to have this talk about, like, if the police ever pull you over, like, you need to be respectful, you need to do everything they say, you need to keep their hands behind their back. I've never seen a white person ever have to have that conversation with their child. Matter of fact, white people have the exact opposite conversation with their child. Fight for your rights. Don't let those cops just railroad you and do this. You have your rights, and we have lawyers that you can call, and all this type of stuff. If you think I'm BSing, you can watch an episode of Cops or any sort of law enforcement episode, and you will find young white kids that will literally cuss a police officer out. Tell them they're not going to sit down. Tell them they're not going to put their hands behind their back. I have seen videos where guys are like, do you know who my father is? He will have all of you and your badges taken, and then he will sue the city. Black kids don't have that luxury. We get shot down. All right? And for those that are saying, all right, well, it's only a small percentage, right? It's only a few cases of black people actually getting gunned down, unarmed black people actually getting gunned down per year, and that the media is blowing it all out of proportion. Let me think. That same rhetoric was used in the 1950s and the 1960s when the KKK were going around and lynching black people and burning crosses. Their idea was, well, it only happens like 2 or 3 times a year, so it's not really that detrimental to the black community. All right, let's see what happens if that happens to your child, right? I'm tired of the double standards. I'm tired of people that I consider brothers and sisters in arms trying to defend what happened, saying Antifa and BLM, they started all this and now we're going to finish it. Like, dude, do you realize that the thing that we fought for, that we had people that we knew that went over to Iraq and supposedly died for, all right, for the protection of this country, for the protection of the Constitution of the United States, all that just went out the window yesterday. And you really have the nerve to defend it over Donald Trump? Come on now, like I said, I don't hate the guy. But I don't feel like he's the guy that's just like, oh, well, he really stands for American values. And then he got up looking about as weak as I've ever seen him. Oh, it's time to go home, guys. Like, literally, they talk to rioters and terrorists and people that literally declared an act of war, right? Like they said, we're not going to take it. And I'm like, all right, cool. Fight for your right. But understand that in fighting for your right, there's a chance that you might die in the fight. But there was no chance of them dying in the fight. They treated all those white people like kindergartners. They treated them like kindergartners. And I'm just like, I have lost faith in all justice in this country. And like I said, the Democrats didn't do any better. They could have called the National Guard in. They didn't. Right? They all literally just sat back and watched everything happen. Like nobody tried to do anything. One, why wasn't the National Guard already there? Why weren't they already there? They were there when Black Lives Matter came. I'm sure it wasn't as many BLM participants and Antifa participants as it was Trump supporters out there. Did they think that because they were white, they were going to be good? That they were just going to follow the rules? They were there. The whole point of the thing was called Stop the Steal. You don't think that some radical was going to be like, oh, they're stealing the election, let's stop it. Like, the whole thing was called Stop the Steal. And people still don't want to see the double standard. And this is really why I'm upset. It's not like I can be objective and look at things and be like, okay, I can see where they're coming from with this. These people don't want to see the other side. Matter of fact, I think they see the other side. They just don't care. They don't care. And that is aggravating. Like I try to make a point of not unfriending people because they have different political views or anything like that. Because I don't like living in an echo chamber, right? I don't like living in a place where I talk and somebody says, yeah, you're right. Yeah, go you. Like, I like it when people disagree with me because it lets me know that I'm not always right. But I was really close to defriending a lot of people on my Facebook page the other day because they just didn't get it. They didn't get it. And they still wanted to be like, oh, it was a peaceful protest. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't a peaceful protest. You're living in an alternate reality right now. I don't know what you're seeing or what you're choosing to see, but that was not a peaceful protest. I guess the fact that the Capitol building wasn't on fire made it a peaceful protest. I don't know. And I know that I'm not the only one that made a video on this. Everybody and their mother made a video on this. But I think more people need to make videos on this. I think there needs to be something like when does all this end? When does this nightmare end? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Well, if you've been with me this far, I thank you for watching. I don't really even care if you comment. I don't care about, what people think. If especially if you're going to try and justify what happened yesterday, if you're going to try to make it like there's no such thing as systemic racism. If you don't think that there's systemic racism, go into a CPS court or DHS court, whatever they call it, DCFS in your state, and you will see that the only white people there are going to be lawyers and judges. All right, the bailiffs, the CPS caseworkers, and the parents that are being charged with neglect of their children are all going to be Black and Latino. All right, there is systemic racism in this country, and it needs to stop. We need to stop giving white people a pass and giving white people a pass for rape and murder, and when black people so much as steal a pack of gum out of the store, they get gunned down in cold blood. Like crime, being black in America. All right, it's a thing. It's a thing, and I'm not saying that to just be like all cops are like that. I have come across some very polite cops in the middle of nowhere, Texas, in the middle of the night, where I could have easily been like shot and buried in the middle of the countryside somewhere and never been found again and disappeared off the face of this earth. And that didn't happen. All right. The cop was very polite. They were just checking on my well-being because, whatever. And, once they figured out that everything checked out and everything was okay, and they didn't even check my background. They were just making sure, I wasn't falling asleep at the wheel or something. It's like once they decided everything was okay, they went about their business, all right? I've come across some very good cops in my lifetime. It's only been like 35 and a half years, but in my 35 and a half years, I've come across some very good cops. I came across, my first experience with cops actually was at like 7 years old when I was throwing something away in a dumpster for my mom, and my jacket got caught on the dumpster, and I was too far away from my mom to be able to like yell like, "Hey, I'm stuck." And this cop came over, and he was a white cop, by the way, and he was like, "Hey, little buddy, like, are you okay?" I was like, "My jacket's stuck." He helped me get my jacket unstuck. That was my first experience with a cop, let alone a white cop, ever in my life. The guy was very nice. He was very polite. He walked me back over to my mom. He explained everything what happened. This was in the 90s. You would think 30 years later, we would have even better cops. And I think that we do. I really do. I'm not trying to say all cops are evil. I'm not trying to say that all white people are racist. I'm not trying to say that all Trump supporters are racist. What I am trying to say is that we exist in this system where there is a double standard. And then when certain people look at other people, they blame them for their failures instead of saying, maybe the system is messed up. Maybe everything is designed for white people to get all the credit, and black people, I'm talking about like financial credit, by the way, financial loans, mortgages, all that type of stuff. And black people are able to get like car loans and credit cards. Mortgages, maybe not so much, right? Maybe things are designed to favor the rich elite, whether they are black or white, because I have seen plenty of times where people with money, regardless of race, it seems like the only time race doesn't matter is if you have at least $1 million in the bank, right? And you can afford a really badass lawyer. Like, other than that, if you're poor, you better hope that you're white, because you might get a pass. If you make under $50,000 a year in this country, which is a large majority of people, and dare I say, if you make really under $75,000 a year in this country, you better pray that you're white. You better pray that you're white, because if you're not, it sucks for the rest of us. All right, I think I'm done saying what I had to say. So, thank you all for watching. God bless you.